If you're trying to tell your story to the world, Mailchimp can help for free. They've got gorgeous pre-designed email templates. You can also code your own. They will show you how to send, when you should send, why people open an email, or why they click delete. They can also help you find your people and grow your business. I am telling you, I have used Mailchimp for many years. It's simple, it's easy, it has helped me a lot. It allows me to find people who like my work, get them on the mailing list, get info right to them. It's simple, it looks good. You can't mess it up. If I'm not messing it up, you're not gonna. Mailchimp can help you tell your story effectively and find people who care about it. More at Mailchimp.com. What's the most puzzling dream you've ever had? Want to know what it means? Well, so do I. Chris Gethard here. That's why Gary Richardson and I have teamed up to take a crack at figuring out your most bizarre nightly musings in our new improv comedy podcast, In Your Dreams on Earwolf. We got special guests on this show. We got Aparna Nancherla, the great Joe Firestone, Wyatt Cenac, my old friend Bobby Moynihan, a lot of really great people. And we're unraveling the mysteries of the dream world. And I will tell you, everybody's heard there's a lot of debate. How real is this? Who is this guy, Gary? What is his deal? There are many questions, many answers, but I guarantee you it's a pretty fun ride. And you keep listening, and this thing only gets funnier and weirder along the way. And of course, along the way, we analyze your dreams that you guys submitted. So subscribe to In Your Dreams on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play. Check it out. I'm very proud of it. I hope you dig it. Hello to all my first-generation people out there. It's Beautiful Anonymous. 1 hour, one phone call. No names, no holds barred.
I'd rather go one-on-one. I think it'll be more fun, and I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know me.
Hey everybody, Chris Gethard here. Welcome to Beautiful Anonymous. I hope everybody's doing well. Some housekeeping to get out of the way. Just want to put this out here real quick, and I hate doing plugs at the top. I always save them for the end, but I am going to London. I'm doing my show in London, and I've never been to the UK before. I never performed in the UK. So if you're hearing this the week it comes out, know that I'm very shortly going to be in your town. If you're an English fan, I'd love to meet you. Many people from across the pond have let me know they like Beautiful Anonymous. SohoTheater.com. Check that out. In the meantime, this call last week, we had this marching band director. I thought, let's start the new year off with a fun one, simple one, get back into it, keep it light, keep it light. Never seen more of an explosion of internet debate about an episode than about this marching band director who drank coffee. I mean, we've done some real dark stuff. And I'm going to, all sorts of stuff. And I get tweets, tons of tweets, Facebook comments. People send me Facebook messages. Let me say this too. If you like the show and you want to have feedback, I think that's awesome. That's great. If you send me a personal Facebook message that's slamming the show, just keep in mind, I can't write back much more than just say like, okay, sorry you didn't like it. It's not much more I can do beyond that. Someone sent me a message full of curses and stuff. I was like, okay. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. It's not everybody likes every episode. Here's some comments that came in. We got this new Facebook group, by the way, the Beautiful Anonymous community on Facebook. If you're on Facebook, search for it. There's over 2,000 people in there, and people talk about this podcast, what they like about episodes, other podcasts that they like. Everybody debates. It's nice. People blew up over this episode. Here, this is going to tell you what my life is like. This is so funny for me to read and so fun for me to read. No one has ever liked, no episode is universally liked. Not even the first one that everybody liked. There's still people who are like, it's fake therapy, man. Listen to this. I get this one comment from a lady named Tasha. Very nice. Expressing her opinion. I've listened to every episode. I could only get through 10 minutes of this most recent one. This marching band episode. It's too much for me. Fair. Okay? I get another one. Right at the top, right, 2 comments above. I listened to the band episode, loved it, might be one of my favorites. The director was funny. The interaction between her and Chris was hilarious. Keep them coming. Could be mine. She says she specifically loves the interaction between me and the caller. I got this guy, Derek. That last one, by the way, was from Margaret. Margaret loved it. This guy, Derek, who says, I want to remind all of us that as joyful as this podcast could be, it's a wonderful it's a long comment. I'm bouncing there. I've been finding lately that Chris has been arguing with the caller a lot more with the band episode. It was really on display. The podcast has limits. I was in shock when Chris called out the caller. He says something along the lines of, shortly thereafter, and then he says, like this, I felt like this was exactly the type of bullying Chris usually speaks out against. So we got one comment that says, loved the interaction between the caller and the guy. Another person says I'm bullying. I don't know. Anyway, who cares? Let's get on to this week's call. I'm psyched to bring this one to you. You know, a person who has a very specific version of the American story, the American dream. Not only she's the first member of her family born here, not first generation. Even her siblings were not born in this country. So a lot of people thinking about immigration a lot lately. It was so cool to hear from someone whose family is in it, who's in it. She was born here. Parents weren't, siblings weren't, and she tells us about all of that. She's such a cool, laid back caller. I had a good time telling her. Tells about the good parts, bad parts, easy parts, hard parts, fun parts, and I think all of us know. For me, it was my grandparents came here from Ireland. But for her, it's living right here, right now. It was so cool to talk to her, and I thank her for calling, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you don't, I'm sure you'll let me know.
Thank you for calling Beautiful Anonymous. A beeping noise will indicate when you are on the show with the host.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. No way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, is this okay? Wow.
It's all finally happening.
I'm like dying inside right now.
It's all happening.
Yes, no,
yeah.
but really, this is like my dream. My dream has come true.
All right. Well, I'm
I'm
happy
stepping
to
outside for a bit, but just to like get into a quiet place. I'm at work right now, but I'm technically calling this my lunch break.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, can I tell you something odd?
Okay.
You totally saved my life.
How's that?
Like a few months ago.
That's cool. How'd I do that?
Yeah. I was doing like a long distance drive for like 9 hours, and I was in like West Kansas, which is like apparently really stormy. And I didn't really know this, but like it's somewhat a well-known thing that there's a lot of storms going on there. And I was definitely like 7 hours into my drive. And previously, I'd only driven over like 3 hours straight. Mm-hmm. So I'm like basically falling asleep at the wheel. And it's the first time I ever started listening to a podcast, and I listened to yours, Beautiful Anonymous. And I was listening to the second one with, I think her name was Julia, I can't remember now, but it's about the girl that was a cam girl.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, I'm totally falling asleep during this, and then she like reveals that she was a cam girl, and I literally wake up, and I'm like, yes! Like, I'm awake, I'm listening, like, it's time to be alive, and I'm like driving through this crazy like tornado storm season thing in Kansas.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I want to...
So no, I like totally attribute your podcast to saving my life, because otherwise I'm pretty sure I would have just like died or something like that.
I want to pass on the real thanks to Julia. To date, the only caller we have ever revealed her personal information because of her inspirational story. She's the lifesaver. I'm just the conduit. I'm just the conduit between Julia and you being alive right now.
Wow. Well, that's magic. I'm really glad that she saved my life.
Yeah. She also, many people who listen to her episode constantly tweet at her and they tag me in it. And I've never been certain if she's totally cool with that. But yeah.
She's not cool with that?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know. The more distance you get from this thing, I wonder. Who knows? Who's to say? I have no idea. That being
every
said,
now and then, I'll be honest, I try to like super sleuth and figure out like who a person is, but then I'm like, no, there's not much worth in this.
Don't do that. Come on. Don't.
Okay.
People do that. I'm like, come on, man. People tweet at me. They're like,
that's
hey.
not the point.
People tweeted at me like, hey, I found out who this person is, and they'll like link, and I'll be like, I'm straight up.
You don't even know.
I don't want to know. It's about the trust.
Yeah.
I need people to have trust in this process that they'll never be real.
True.
And that's how I squeeze out the secrets, because they know I got their back. I'll get you to tell me. You're going to tell some secrets, right?
No, I've totally got secrets, man.
Perfect.
No, I'm totally at work right now, and so I'm like low-key paranoid. I think I have like low-key paranoia. Sometimes I think people are listening.
Yeah.
But that's the environment that I work in.
Are you on a work phone or are you on a cell phone?
No, I'm on my cell phone.
Yeah.
Luckily.
So that's a little less likely to be tapped.
And I only have like, I don't know. I work for a non-profit, and like that's not looming. That doesn't sound like dangerous whatsoever, but
yeah, the notoriously Orwellian world of nonprofits.
Right. Well, we work with like kids. So I'm just like, hey, and we talk to them about like character building. And I'm like, hey, let's talk about all of my terrible secrets or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, I get that. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to say anything you don't feel like saying.
Yeah. I like, hey, so when I like technically pitched to your producer, whichever, I talked to him that I wanted to talk to you about like growing up as like a first generation Asian American. And this just comes from like you tweeting out, like this was a while back that like you tweeted about wanting to hear about a different culture.
Yeah, I'd love that.
I feel like I'm a person that could represent a small slice of what it's like growing up as an Asian American, I guess.
That's cool. I would love to talk about that.
Yes. Cool. Because I'm from like the Midwest, so
yeah,
it's very much not super Asian populated.
And where are your folks from?
I like Vietnam. Yeah.
Wow.
So I have 3 older brothers, and they were all born in Vietnam. And then my parents and my brothers moved here back in 1991. And in 1993, my mom had me. So,
wow. What prompted the move?
Yeah. We were just sponsored from like a different family wanting us to be over here. My parents are from like a pretty rural area. My dad more closer to the city, but my mom is like, and I got to visit back when I was in first grade, but my mom's family lives like straight up sticks. Like their house is like a tin roof and the rest is wood, like no running water. They're just farmers. But like a pretty poor area.
Wow.
Like we had probably in the area the nicest house on the place, and like right down the street was just like a house someone had built out of twigs. So we were lucky enough to have like an actual roof.
Yeah.
I say we, but like, my family back in Vietnam.
Right.
My dad, his family were like more business oriented, but like they still didn't have any running water or anything like that. So pretty interesting. Like I haven't visited for a while, but really different outlook on life out there.
Yeah, that's a massive shift. Because that's not even. It's
Yeah.
like it's almost not like your siblings were born there. It's almost not even. It's not even a full generation. You are like you straddle the. There is a bridge between you and your own generation. Like you're like.
Yeah, I mean it's so funny. When I was a kid, I would ask my mom for like $1 or whatever, like, Mom, like it's just $1. Like, why can't I go buy this? And she would be like, your grandma lived on $1 for like a week to feed her whole family. And so like my perspective on money is just like, oh yeah, like way to guilt trip me, Mom. Sorry. Like
now I have an ignorant.
I'm gonna ask to Vietnam.
I'm just gonna ask an ignorant question. I'm sure I'll ask a series of ignorant questions.
Go for it.
Did your family?
No, I like.
Yeah, no, say it.
Yeah, go for it. Sorry. No, I have nothing.
Okay, I was gonna ask. Did your family speak English before coming to America?
They did not.
They did not.
0. So yeah, like no money to their name came over here, and so I mean we're sponsored by a family that was just like really. They like reached out because that's their goal, is to bring people over that were affected by the war. Just like as a side story, my dad was actually a POW for like 9 years of his life. And I just found this out like a month ago. Like I didn't know this about my dad. Like, yeah, I like knew he was a POW, but I had no idea the link. So like my dad was in the war, like the Vietnam War. And like he's just become a little bit more open about talking about the different things that happened. And so we found out he was a POW from the age of like 18 to 27.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I like heard about this and I was like, Dad, that's like the best years of your life. like technically like those could be like people live their youth in those years. So I don't know. It's really interesting to learn more about my dad now as I'm older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, what was his involvement in the war?
He was on like the South side. So kind of, he was just, I'm not like 100% sure. He was like drafted. And so really early on got captured by the Viet Cong and spent the majority of the time as a POW.
Whoa.
And so it wasn't until like, yeah.
Whoa. Do you think that was a factor in your family getting sponsored coming to the States?
Oh, for sure, for sure. I think they definitely look out for people that were POWs and they select them just because, I mean, I don't think you'd want to be living in that kind of climate, not like.
Yeah.
So it's definitely like a new start. Like my dad when they arrived here, my dad went straight into like low-tech schools and things like that and became like a machinist and an electrician and just like restarted life over.
Wow.
So it's pretty wild that my parents did that. Like I can't think of people that are more brave to do that, where like you come to a different country, you have nothing and you bring like your family and you just honestly start over. You don't even know the language. So my parents are definitely just like a huge inspiration to me.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you clearly grew up speaking English from the start, yeah? Because I mean,
I grew up speaking Vietnamese. Like it was definitely my first language, but like school totally helps.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And you say you live in the Midwest, but you have like the I don't know if you've gotten this before. You have like both like the vocal pattern and the laugh, the giggle of a California-esque stoner. Have you heard this before?
Okay, yeah. I've heard that. I've definitely heard that.
That was it. That was the giggle I was.
It kind of makes sense. I also have like this is just odd. I have a degree in botany.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just yeah.
So maybe you have the vocal pattern, giggle, and lifestyle of a California stoner. It sounds like
a bit trying to live that here for sure.
Botany.
I think.
Are you going to try to get into the industry as it legalizes? Like, is that? I would imagine a botany degree right now is a pretty. That's a.
So I don't even use my degree. I use my degree, but like in a totally different sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was into like pharmaceutical discovery for a little bit, and I worked in like the research field for a bit, and then this nonprofit really just captured my heart. And we work with like middle school age students. So I'm kind of out of the whole plant world. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I use my degree in the sense of like my research background because I do like the outcomes and things like that for our students. So I like track them and figure out, like how our program is affecting them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
So I want to ask.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
I want to ask a broad question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to ask a broad question, and you might be like, you know what, dude, that's just too much for me. I don't know. That's a totally valid answer, but I do have to ask. Being that, I mean, it sounds like your parents escaped war, your parents escaped poverty, your brothers were born there, you're born here, you are the bridge. Like it's almost fair to say that you're first generation America, but almost even like 0.75 generation America, if that makes sense, right? Like your family is still very much rooted there. We're living in a country right now where immigration has become like one of the buzzwords, one of the hot topics. And I'm really interested to see, I would imagine you must be reacting to that in a totally different way than the large majority of people listening to this right now.
It was, it's odd. Like, it has been a hot topic for a little bit now. Even like where I work, there's a student that I'm pretty close with, and her family are like huge avid Trump supporters. And so when I found that out, I was like, wait, like, how can you like support that? Like, do you understand? Like, he's basically against like everything that I am. Like, I know that sounds like really, I don't know, like I don't want to play victim or anything like that, but it's like when he was elected president and like he won, I honestly cried. Like I never expected that reaction out of myself whatsoever, but it just seemed like in that moment, it felt like a realization that half of America like wasn't like they didn't want to be aware of the situation of like racism and race relations going on. And so like talking to one of my students about it, like she just thinks that there should be a ban on immigration. And I'm like, do you understand? Like I literally would not be here if there was a ban on immigration. Like, I mean, if it were enacted like 25 years ago, like if that same thought process were a thing, like I wouldn't be here. My family wouldn't be here. Like, I don't know. I don't know. It's just, it's disappointing, especially to live, like I told you, I live in the Midwest. Like I live in a completely red state. Like, I don't know. I have the fortune of like living in a college town. So there's definitely like some Democrats here. But the majority are really, really Republican.
Yeah. So you're like you're the voice of someone, like I even see, like you were so, I feel bad because you were so cheerful and excited to be on this show, and then I asked this question and a clear cut, more somber cloud took things over immediately. But
Chris, you're so good at that though.
of what, making things that are fun somber? Yeah, I've been hearing that my whole life. Yeah, I've been hearing that my whole life. Thank you for that. It's true. I've always been known. I'm one of the rare comedians who removes fun from the room consistently. But I just think it's
so good.
Well, that's nice to hear. But
as odd as that sounds,
I do just it does just feel to me like meaningful in some way to just hear that, just to hear, and to maybe know that there's some people listening who haven't heard that, of like this. You are someone whose family has worked hard and given a lot, and now you're contributing a lot, and you're working in a nonprofit, and it's not a theoretical. These phantoms, like immigrants are these like phantoms. It's like, no, they're people who are trying to feed their they're people who are trying to feed their families and not live in a house with a tin roof and doing what they can. And I don't know. I don't want to get too political, but I do think it is just hearing you are the person in question. You are the person taking it personally. A lot of the people who are saying these opinions aren't people who have to think on a personal level about the opinions they're spreading. So sorry to bum you out.
Right.
Sorry to
I'm
have
like,
a bummer answer.
No.
Question rather, but
No, I want to talk about things like this, and like I'm like low key addicted to going on Facebook and reading comments of like people that have opposite beliefs than I do. Like, as weird as that sounds, like I want to stir something up. I think it's been something that's been on my heart for a while now, for about a year. Just wanting to talk to our students more about like race. It kind of started when we took a group of our students to LA last spring, and just showed them two very different sides of LA. You see like the really like the posh, the glamour side that you see in Hollywood, and then you see the other side, like the more of the inner city. And we actually took them out to like an area really close to Compton, and we did some service projects out there. But wanting them to be really aware and to basically be exposed to the different walks of life that there are, because if you don't see it, you just don't know. And you can't build empathy. You can't have compassion for these people if you don't know exactly what's going on. So it's definitely something that like I've started to become more vocal about, because I don't know if you know this, but like among the Asian community, it's just a little bit well known that of all of the races, like we're the ones that like to keep quiet about our issues. Like, as far as like, if someone is like being racist or anything like that, our initial reaction is to just lie low. I think that's something that I've very much seen as a pattern. In my experiences, like we don't want to stir up trouble. We want to just like skate on by, basically. And so like it's very much like different now, and seeing some of my friends like actually speak out against like racism against Asians, just because it's like it's different, and it's not like, racism against blacks or anything like that. Like it's not like Black Lives Matter, like the movement of like people statistically being killed more, but like just like a different, more of a microaggression racism that I think people just need to be more aware of. And like it hurts us when we don't talk about it. And so I've definitely been trying to be more vocal about like my experiences growing up in like mostly white schools and mostly white communities. And basically just like not even like when I was young, not even understanding racism, like when it was happening to me, and just like accepting it. Like, this is, oh yeah, I guess I'm like the different one or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely, I think about my childhood, and I grew up, I was born in 1980, and like I even think about like the entertainment, and it was like, oh, it's just like more visibly racist. Like it just was like, like I remember when I was like, I look at it now and I'm like, man, like you look at like it's just undeniable. Like I can imagine being, I will never know for certain, as somebody who's an Irish Catholic, I will never know what it feels like to be an Asian American, but I would imagine seeing a character like Long Duck Dong doesn't feel great. I would imagine, like, I remember
It's pretty
the Police Academy movies.
odd,
I was raised on the Police Academy movies, and there's a character there whose whole thing was like kung fu and sound effects, and it's like, oh, that's gotta get old fucking fast. That's gotta get old fast, man. I know what everybody's thinking. God forbid this guy goes one episode without bringing up Long Duck Dong. But I get it. I'm sure everybody needs to take a break because it's... Oh, wait. I've never brought him up one time before. Let me go ahead and get my stuff together. While I'm getting my act together, why don't you enjoy some words from the fine sponsors that allow this show to happen. Tell you, just the other day, I get home and my wife, what's she doing? She's cooking Blue Apron. And I got to finish off making that meal with her, and it felt good because cooking together builds strong family bonds, and research shows that Blue Apron families cook nearly 3 times more often. Get together, do it. It's nice. It's a nice thing. Also, good impact on the community. Let's not forget they source their seafood sustainably. The beef is raised humanely, chicken's free range, pork raised naturally, regenerative farming practices used for their produce, and you can have Blue Apron delivered to 99% of the continental U.S. and 99.5% of food deserts. And guess what? They also ship the exact amount you need. It's not wasteful. It's good. It's good. It's good. And you know what's most good is the taste of these meals coming up in January. Seared pork chops with farro and cranberry chutney, spaghetti squash and marinara with mushrooms and garlic nuts, spicy shrimp and Korean rice cakes with cabbage and furikake, something that I am almost certainly mispronouncing. Apologies. Check out this week's menu. Get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/beautiful. You'll love it. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. So don't wait. That's blueapron.com/beautiful. Blue Apron. It's a better way to cook. If you're listening to this right now, it's safe to assume you're a podcast fan. So here's another podcast you should check out. It's called Secrets, Crimes, and Audio Tape. It's an audio drama told week after week. This week's audio drama is Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale takes place in a dystopian future. I love me a good dystopian future, where handmaids are assigned to bear children in a totalitarian theocracy that has overthrown the United States government. Topical. You know, it's just your light, typical dystopian society podcast. Listen to the first couple of episodes today of Secrets, Crimes, and Audio Tape on iTunes, Stitcher, the Wondery app on Android, or wherever you listen to podcasts. I want to go ahead and hear from this very nice caller about what her life was like because it's different than mine and I'm an open person who wants to listen. Let's get into it. The Police Academy movies. I was raised on the Police Academy movies, and there's a character there whose whole thing was like kung fu and sound effects, and it's like, oh, that's gotta get old fucking fast. That's gotta get old fast, man.
Yeah, no, it just more feels like you're making fun of like an entire group of people. So like I was known in my school as like the Asian, like that was, and it was like something I was like, yeah, like that's me, that's who I am. But then like otherwise, like what was my identity? And like how did people really see me other than outside of that? And so you get a lot of people that like judge you for just basically your race and like assume that you're like, I guess like not that I'm not smart, like people just assuming that I'm really good at math or like whichever. And so like when I got to college, I started like coloring my hair, started like just basically doing things to try to set myself apart and find like who I am.
So it was like rather than be pigeonholed into any traditional thing, you were like, I'm gonna go big and just sort of, you know. I think, although it's less so, when I was a kid, if somebody had hair that was a non-traditional color, it was like, oh, they're trying to be an outcast. It's a little less so now, but it's definitely remarkable. Like, I'm not just gonna be the as you say, I'm
not gonna be who you expect I am.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was like my biggest thing was that a lot of people like so often I would get people that would say, oh my gosh, you're so much more outgoing and like, you're not very like stuck up or you're not very like tightly wound as I thought you were. And I was like, I've been the same person from the very beginning we've met. Like you just made that like assumption about me based on like the way I look or the way I dress. Like, so I don't know. So I started like, I started coloring my hair to hopefully like express to people. Like I'm not maybe what you think I am. But then I'm like totally catering towards that too. Like where it's like, yeah, I'm not who you think I am, but you shouldn't be basing that off of my appearances whatsoever anyway.
Right. And do you get a sense, like, have you talked to your parents? Like, did they, what was their hope when they were entering the U.S.? Like, was it like, we're going to go live the dream, or did they know, like, we're going to brace ourselves for some racism? Did they brace you for it? Did they expect it coming in? Like, how does that work? What's that?
I think it was definitely mostly just they wanted a better life for their kids. Was just the whole initial thing. Like they didn't want their kids to. My mom used to do this to me all the time, where she didn't like me really like washing the dishes, which sounds weird, but like she didn't like me washing the dishes because she wanted to keep my hands like not looking like they had been worked. And so she would like literally hold out her hands and show them to me, and be, like, because she worked in the fields, and so she was like, I don't want you to like work like this. I don't want your hands to look like this. And so like all growing up, like I was pushed to be like a doctor or like a pharmacist. And my mom, like I would get calls all the time, like when I was in college, like, hey, just like do this so you don't have to do the things that I did.
Wow. Yeah.
So like that was their biggest hope.
Yeah. Because I know that's another stereotype of first generation Asian immigrants,
for sure
is like,
it is. Like
riding their kids in school and really pushing hard. That's I know I grew up with some kids whose parents were Korean immigrants, and it seemed like their parents were not fucking around. Like you go, you get good grades, you do it. But I also know that's another stereotype that I'm
so
perpetuating.
Scared, dude.
Yeah, you had that stereotype proved true.
Like in that sense, like there's totally like truth where some of these things come from, and my parents were definitely like kind of like the tiger parents, essentially, where if you came home with anything but an A, it was like doomsday. Like my mom would threaten me like do you need a tutor? And like to me that was like the worst thing ever. It's like, no, like I don't need a tutor, like or like she's like, if you don't work hard in school you have to go to community college. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's terrible. So no, education was always like priority one. Like my mom, our parents didn't want us to like even have jobs when we were in high school. And my brother like rebelled and got a job at Walmart. It was so funny.
That's so, from my perspective, from my spoiled, I mean, my maternal grandparents were immigrants, and I saw the hard work, everything like that, but I still was like raised as a very spoiled American kid. And the idea that the way you rebel is to get a job at Walmart that's like, I'm really pissing my parents off by working in the in a notoriously backbreaking service industry corporation that doesn't take the best care of their employees. I'm really gonna step out of the box on that one. Wow. What was your brother? Have you talked with your brothers about, like, because that's a specific experience too. Like, they just got removed from one situation.
Yeah.
They were like, they had to come here and find friends and adjust and not speak the language. That must have been super hard on them, huh?
Dude, I have the worst story. And like, I always think, okay, so I have 3 older brothers. One is like 9 years older, the other is 7 years older, and the other is 4 years older than I am. So they're all older brothers. And the one closest in age to me, he has a story about when he like was first in school. Like my brothers didn't speak English very well, obviously, and so they were in like ESL, it's like English speaking language like class. And so my brother, like he went to the restroom one time, and these kids, these 2 boys like went into the bathroom stall with him and like shoved him against the wall and then like peed on his shoes. And it was just basically like learn English. And this is like when he was like 6 or something like that. And I've always thought, like, I'm not an angry person whatsoever, but I've always thought like if I had a time machine, I would go back to that exact moment and like beat the shit out of those kids. Like I was so mad when he told me that story. It was awful.
Yeah, that's fucked. That's real fucked.
No, I was super pissed. But, I mean, my brothers have just different experiences. Like, my oldest brother still has an accent. And so, like, he still gets, like, called out on that sometimes. My other 2 brothers are pretty much, they live a pretty, like, standard Asian American life, I guess you could say. I don't know what's standard, but, yeah, like, I don't think they don't feel like racism definitely affects them very much anymore right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's a pretty brutal story. I'm having a tough time moving on from that one.
It definitely makes me so mad.
Me too. Because especially I would imagine there's a lot of things being said, and if your brother doesn't quite have a grasp on English, I bet two of the words that definitely shine through are learn English. I bet that must have been just like a truly scary moment for a 6-year-old kid.
Yeah. I know, like, I mean, you definitely just don't feel like you're welcome, and it's based off of your race, you know, something you definitely can't change about yourself. And it definitely, I think, creates some identity issues, and makes you like not want to be who you are, you know?
Yeah.
At least that's like kind of what it felt like for me growing up. Like, it was just like this battle. And like, okay, my family's like pretty closely involved with like the Vietnamese community. Like there's just like little pockets of it in different cities. And so I grew up in a Vietnamese Baptist church, which is like a whole different story on its own.
Whoa.
Yeah. Can you imagine, like, it's an Asian community plus a Baptist community? It's intense. And so, like, but we're all pretty involved in, like, an Asian community in some aspect, but, like, I've never felt like I have belonged. Like, it's really difficult unless I've known like, my church, like, back home. Like I've known them all for a really long time. So like, I feel like a sense of community there, but like whenever there's these like basically like conventions, for like Asian Americans to meet up and like talk or whatever, I don't know, like I always have big difficulties like fitting in, and it's because I'm like more quote unquote white than them. But then like you go into like white communities and you don't feel like you quite fit in. Like, I think I just realized like how different my humor can be at times. Like going from like the Vietnamese community into like a white community, and how like, oh, these jokes work here, but they don't work here.
Wow.
So it's odd.
Yeah, that's such a specific way to think of it, that certain jokes don't play. You're talking to a comedian where I'm like, oh, I get that. I know there's certain rooms I go to, or when I'm on the road, certain areas of the country I go to where I'm like, I'm not going to say that joke. That joke won't play. You just help me identify what the immigrant experience is by appealing to my profession of comedy. So thank you for that. What a fascinating way to think of it. So when you say that, like in
I'm so glad.
do you think when you think like the Vietnamese community sometimes is wary because they view you as more white? Is a lot of that because you were born here? Is that from a lot of the people who actually?
No, like they were born here too, but it's like there's just like a different like culture, and you can like identify it even by the way that they like dress. So like growing up, like I was a kid that I really liked wearing clothes from Goodwill, but like more of an alternative like style of clothing, and everyone else liked to dress like from Express. As odd as that sounds, like they just like to wear like Express clothing. So I don't know, there's like a certain part you had to play where like you were Asian, but you were also trying to be white at the same time, but a specific kind of white. And I, as an Asian, was trying to be like more of a, like I grew up, I was like a gothic punk kid when I was in middle school. So like I didn't fit in with like any of the mainstream crowds, like, which was interesting.
Right. So it's like, it's almost like, so in any predominantly white community, you're always going to feel like they're viewing you as the Asian kid. And then on top of it, amongst first generation kids in the Vietnamese community, they're emulating certain pockets of maybe traditionally, of American culture, and you're emulating one that's different from theirs. So you're already like anyone who's a punk rocker is going to feel alienated. You have that. The fact that you're ethnic in a white community, you're going to feel alienated. You have that. And those things also butt heads. That doesn't sound like the coolest. That doesn't sound like the easiest
Part
situation.
of me just did this to myself.
Well, you definitely...
It was definitely... Yeah.
You definitely got that punk rocker vibe where you're like, no, you don't get to put me in any box. And I identify with this too as a kid. We're like, nobody's going to put me on any box. So that means I'm just going to be off in this corner by myself, ultimately. I mean,
well, it was interesting. Like in sixth grade, I met these kids that wore black all the time, and like I was sitting by myself, and so they invited me to sit with them, and that's when I started wearing black all the time, and like eye makeup and things like that. And like I found a crowd that accepted me. But even in that crowd, I was the Asian kid.
Yeah. Now, when you go goth and your Vietnamese parents want you to be getting straight A's, when you start like letting the eyeliner really bleed out and you're wearing the black turtlenecks, what's that reaction like?
Oh man. Okay. My dad, his like least favorite color is black. Like he hates the color black. And so, but my dad's like pretty generally quiet about the things that I choose to do unless they're like way out there. My mom just like, she's like disappointed and like she'll buy me, like she used to like try to buy me clothes that was like more vibrant. And then she realized that I wouldn't wear them. So, like, she stopped that. I mean, they were pretty free and, like, easygoing. Like, I think I was the fourth child and, like, the last child and the baby of the family. They kind of were just like, yeah, she's a little bit different. And we'll just let her do her thing. Like, I remember I only found this, like, when I told my parents initially, like, going into college, I wanted to be a photojournalist. Like, nobody really said anything, but, like, you could tell they were disappointed a little bit. And so it wasn't until, like, a year, like, later on, I switched to pharmacy, which, like, was just a really random, like, I sat down in my advisor's seat, and she was like, hey, like, what do you want to do? And I said, pharmacist. And I was like, oh, my gosh, this is, like, totally, like, years and years of people just saying this to me, and I didn't even know what I had said. Like, I said pharmacist and I just decided to roll with it. Like that wasn't my intent. Like literally 10 minutes prior to talking to her, I had told people I was going to be a photojournalist and I was like, they have really indoctrinated me, haven't they? And so I like said pharmacist to her. And so when I got home and told my parents, my mom just like had a huge relief and she was like, oh my gosh, like we didn't want to tell you, but dad was so disappointed. Like, what? Like nobody wanted to say anything to me. But then they were proud. And then when I told them I was going to work for a nonprofit, they were like, what is this life? Like, but thankfully my older brothers are all like ultra successful in what they do. So
yeah,
I think they make up for it.
I would have to imagine if your father was a POW and your mother often told you that your grandmother survived on $1 a month, a week, whatever you said. And
a week, yeah.
$1 a week. I'm sure that when you've escaped from a POW camp and your family is accustomed to living off $1 a week, that just the phrase non-profit, your parents must be like, this is not what we fucking came here for. We came here for profit. Specifically, profit was one of the driving goals of why we moved halfway across the fucking world. Profit. Sorry, Sally. Sorry, Sally.
Legit,
I used that for.
They were like, wait, are you talking to your mom right now?
Yeah, every time I curse, my mom listens to every episode. My dad doesn't. My mom tells my dad what the good ones are. My mom will tell my dad, hey, this one was a good episode. But my mom listens to everyone. So whenever I use a curse word, I like to say sorry, Sally, to make sure my mom knows I'm sorry.
Dude, that rocks. Totally honor your parents. No, my mom, like, she's totally banking on the fact that I can like marry rich or something. And I'm like, I don't know, Mom. Like, I kind of live in this nonprofit world. I kind of feel like I'm either going to marry someone else in that like realm, or I don't know if I get really lucky, but like maybe a musician if you're
maybe
okay with that.
if I reach high, I might land in the very well-known world of struggle that is professional musician. And your mom will probably be like, oh,
no,
maybe it'll be Kanye. And you're going to be like, no, there's these things called DIY spaces, and it's more that type of musician.
I wish. So
no, I'm talking about the type of musician that lives with 11 other people in a loft, and they all call themselves freegan, which means they eat garbage, Mom. I'm going to marry someone who eats garbage.
No.
That's the type of musician we're talking about.
Actually, the guy that I like right now is a vegetarian. Yeah, no, whatever. No, I dated an engineer last year, and my parents were all like, what? Like, this is promising.
So that's funny, though, because it's like, you know, there are stereotypes to fight against. There is pigeonholing that happens, but there is also some element in which it sounds like some of the stereotypes, at least as far as your parents' hopes for you, kind of, they do kind of fit the stereotypes. And then it sounds like when you, like the pharmacist thing or dating an engineer, when you fall into some of those stereotypes, there's a little hope there, it sounds like. This is an interesting thing.
No, yeah, there definitely is. And like, it's okay. There was it's kind of an old meme, but it was like high expectations, Asian father. And like, I would laugh hard at every single one of those because they all felt so true. Like, where there was this one where it's like, you can be anything you want, son, as long as it's either a doctor or a lawyer. Like,
yeah.
Definitely felt like those guidelines were set up for us. And so, no, my oldest brother is like a computer engineer, and he works for like a pretty big corporation in San Francisco. And my middle brother is a doctor, and like he like basically breezed through medical school. Like, that's no joke. He like, it was so easy for him. He had like free time. Nice. And then my other brother, the one closest in age to me, is an electrical engineer, but he quit his job so that he could open his own businesses. So he owns 2 businesses right now. And I'm like over here like, hey guys, I'm the one that decided to do something different. So
you're the American daughter. You're the American daughter in a big way.
I am, for sure. Yeah.
And you're the only daughter.
It's funny.
You're the black sheep in every way. The American daughter making waves. We have to hear from these sponsors that allow this show to happen. Thank you to all of them for bringing Beautiful Anonymous into the world. And I hope you all hear about many products and services that are useful in your lives. Therapy can and should be affordable, confidential, convenient, and this is exactly what Talkspace is. Only with Talkspace do you get unlimited messaging to your dedicated licensed therapist for just $32 a week. Join over 300,000 users who already know that with Talkspace you can text, audio message, or video message your therapist as many times as you want without having to wait a week for your next appointment. Because with Talkspace, your therapist is always in your pocket or on your computer. And now, you can even schedule a live video session with your therapist right from your smartphone. Help show support for this show by visiting Talkspace.com/beautiful for a special $30 discount off your first month, or download the Talkspace app on the Apple or Android App Store. Use coupon code BEAUTIFUL. Talkspace, therapy for how we live today. We got more phone call. We're going to finish this one strong. I have a feeling we're going to stick the landing on this one. Let's get into it. And you're the only daughter.
It's funny.
You're the black sheep in every way.
I felt that way growing up, but now they used to push me. So like my middle brother, so like my oldest brother, he doesn't want to be doing the thing that he wants to do. Like if he had actually followed his dreams, he says he would have been like a psychiatrist or something like that. And he like pushed me like, go do the things that you want to do. It doesn't come from my parents, but it does come from my brothers because I think they experienced it.
But he is a doctor, right?
Well, the middle brother is a doctor, and he says he like pushed me to go be a singer. Like he was like, you have like what it takes, like just go do like be a singer. Like you could do that. Like I would support you and whatnot. And my brother closest in age like just says to me like, as long as you feel like that's what you're supposed to be doing and you're not going to be starving, it's fine by me. And like I have a really interesting relationship with my brothers because of like I think the age gaps and like the presence of my actual parents in my lives because they worked. My dad worked like 60-hour weeks oftentimes like growing up, and my mom worked 2 jobs. So like they weren't like super present like on a day-to-day basis. And so my 3 older brothers were like basically my dad. And like the brother closest in age to me that's only 4 years older, he's the one that like legit set my curfew. He like was the one that like reprimanded me. Like he was the one that like really filled in like that father role aspect in that sense.
Yeah. That's cool. And again, it loops back around to me where it's like you hear about your family and it's like, man, you hear it's just very refreshing for me right now to hear, because it's just a reminder of like, you hear so much right now of immigrants take our jobs and immigrants this and that and build a wall. And it's like, no. Immigrants come to this country and they work 60-hour weeks and their families become these tight units that raise each other so they can become things like doctors and small business owners and non-profit volunteers and become a part of things in a way that I bet is more beneficial and giving and altruistic than a lot of families who have been here for many generations actually give. It's really, that is striking that you guys raised each other, made it work, got by.
It's an experience I definitely wouldn't give up. Like as like tough as it was, like struggling with this idea of like I have to be the Asian or whatever. Like my culture is my favorite thing about me. Like I love the way that I grew up, and like celebrating the different like holidays that we got to and the ways that we did. And like, I think for me, like my strongest tie to my culture is food. And so like, I'm a huge like foodie, and that's what, I mean, I love that. Like I don't like, that's my connection to my culture. And so loving that I got to grow up with that, and like also being that kid that would bring like weird food to lunch or whatever, and like people judging for it, and like loving now, like it's a much more like, I think, open space for trying different cultures' food. And so like people not judging about it, and like you being able to educate people on like, yeah, like we eat this and that, and like it's not weird, has been like, I think, super awesome.
What's the food? What do I got to check out? Because I live in Jackson Heights, Queens, which is, I've been told,
dude,
I
I wish I knew about Queens. I'm like straight up in I'm in the heart of I'm in the heart of the USA, dude.
Well, I've been told that Jackson Heights, Queens is the most diverse neighborhood in the most diverse county in the United States, and I'm proud of that. And it's cool. I walk down different blocks, you just see rows of different restaurants, and there's Vietnamese restaurants all in my neighborhood. So you tell, what do I got to find? What's the stuff on the menu where if it's on the menu that's like real, like, oh, you're in a place that's for real? Like what's the food I got to try when it comes to Vietnamese?
Okay, so you have to try bún bò Huế, and it's like a spicy beef noodle soup. And it's actually from the region where my family is from. So there's like Vietnam is kind of split into 3 like provinces. So there's like the north, there's the middle, the Huế area, and then there's the south. And so Huế is actually the smallest area, and it's where the royals used to live. And so it would be where all of the, like, basically your most expensive food like came from out of Vietnam. So like where all the really heavily spiced foods came from. And so bún bò Huế is just like a spicy beef noodle soup, and it's like it's like, I would say probably second to pho in like how well known it is.
Okay, and how do I spell it?
But you like have to look for a really good one.
How do I spell it?
B-U-N.
Yeah, B-U-N.
Space B-O space H-U-E.
So I would in my ignorant fashion, I would see it and go bon bahue. That's my ignorant American. That's how ignorant Americans pronounce that. Okay, keep my eyes peeled for that.
I'm glad with your attempt though. Some people would just be like, I don't know, it's like a pet peeve of mine when people just like glaze over a word because they can't pronounce it. I'm like, at least try.
Well,
like,
that's
I
my
don't care
exact.
to make a fool of yourself.
I'm 100% aware of the fact that I will often come off as ignorant, but I'm happy to admit that and give it the old college try. So bon bahue, okay. And what else? What else do I have to try? Are there any because I stopped eating the meat back in March. But it.
Oh,
I know that from what I've noticed. I know there's a place in my neighborhood that serves Vietnamese sandwiches, and they're dope. And I miss them because they used to have like pate and carrots on the sandwiches. I don't know if that's some poser Americanized bullshit. You can tell me.
No, pate is the best, dude. Like, okay, that's the cool thing about Vietnamese food, and like I'm totally biased in this, but like Vietnamese food has like a high influence from French food and Chinese cuisine. So like I feel like we get the best of like it's technically fusion even though it's not. So I like love that. You should try like bun xeo, which is like a sizzling pancake, and you can totally get them vegetarian. But it's like a Vietnamese crepe essentially.
A Vietnamese crepe. That sounds good. I'm getting hungry now. Okay.
It's so good.
So you can walk into a restaurant and right away you'll know if it's northern or southern or the more central location. You'll know. You look at the menu before you even walk through the door. You're like, okay.
Most restaurants are pretty blended now.
Okay.
Like as far as like cuisines go, but like I think you'll know if they have like a specialty. So like bun xeo is more of a northern thing. Bún bò is like a middle thing. And then pho is a southern thing. So like you can also like identify different where pho was made or like who made it from the region by like the flavors in it. So like if it's like heavy on the like star anise and the cinnamon, it's probably a northern like recipe.
So you'll know. You can take.
And if it's like more mellow.
Because pho is a real. I don't know if you're familiar with this in New York. Pho, a couple years ago, pho became like a real hipster favorite.
Yeah, I know.
Pho became a real hipster favorite, but you can taste it. You can take a couple. You'll take a couple spoonfuls of pho, and you'll know. Okay, someone northern works in this kitchen.
Maybe. I mean, the most popular is southern, so like it's pretty rare. But like, okay, just as an aside, there was a guy in Philly, this like totally American guy in Philly that was like claiming the correct and proper way to eat pho, and it was like totally like a huge thing in my community, where it was like, who does this white guy think he is, telling us how to eat our pho? Because it was like, he told us not to eat it with hoisin sauce and not to eat it with sriracha, and we were like, yo, that's like the only way we know how to eat it. Like, so he was like claiming like this is like the original like true way, and we were like, you're joking right now, right? Like that's low key offensive.
So a guy claiming to spread the culinary tradition of your world, and then telling you how to do it correctly. Not the best look, I would imagine.
No.
Yeah.
Terrible idea.
All right. So we've heard about the food. Are there any other Vietnamese traditions that I might not know about? Are there any holidays I can participate in? Any community events or festivals or gatherings that I can keep my eyes on in my diverse liberal wonderland of Jackson Heights that I should participate in? Like I live a few.
You should figure out if there's like a lunar New Year festival. Like it's basically Chinese New Year, but like it's the same thing. But like it's Lunar New Year, and in Vietnam they actually celebrate it for an entire week. Like that's how big it is. Like this is how important the New Year is for us. But it's like the biggest celebration all year. And people like, you make special foods for it. It's like when the dragon dances happen, and there's like this really pretty flower. It's like this yellow flower that blooms only during the spring. And so like that's everywhere. Like it's like the representation of like New Year's is this flower. So like I would definitely go see if there's like a festival nearby, like go eat a moon cake or something like that. But it's like, seriously, it's so fun. It's like you do dances and things like that. Like my church, like I told you, I grew up in a Baptist church. There's like no dancing allowed except for New Year's. Like it was like the one exception we allowed. Like at weddings that we had at our church, like there was no dancing until the pastor left. And he always knows that he like should leave the wedding early so that people can dance.
Wow.
Which is kind and considerate, yeah.
And is that
but like he knows like no one's gonna dance in front of him.
Is it common? Does the Baptist faith have a foothold in Vietnam, or was that a more specific thing that you fell into with your community and family? What's the predominant? Is that a lot of Vietnamese Americans you're going to find? Are they members of the Baptist church? You know what I'm saying here.
The most predominant is probably Catholic, and that was like allowed in Vietnam. Like it only just became, like I don't know the exact laws against it, but like basically the Baptist version and most Christianity was banned in Vietnam unless you like follow really specific guidelines.
Is that a lot of that? The French brought the Catholicism?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, look at that.
And so Baptist is like becoming bigger, and like the majority of like all of the Vietnamese communities I know are because of like the Vietnamese Baptist communities.
Yeah.
So it's mostly like more of a Southern thing.
Okay. Now
as far as like churches go.
I got a request. I want to try something. Can we try an experiment here? Beautiful Anonymous. Something that hasn't been done before.
Potentially, yeah.
Now you mentioned you're still fluent in Vietnamese, correct?
Kind of. Like I speak a different dialect. So I told you my family's from the middle, which is also the most like smallest region. Yeah. And so I have a dialect, like the Hue dialect, and my accent is pretty heavy, which is weird because I definitely didn't grow up there. But my accent, like people mention like my accent's actually heavier than my parents and my brothers.
I was going to ask, is there any way, we have about 8 minutes left, is there any way we could have a portion of this podcast where you just send a message in your specific Vietnamese dialect so that only other people who speak that dialect will understand it? And you can say whatever you want. You could say, here's the thing to check out, or I hope I've represented our community well, or you could say this big-headed white man with his glasses. I have been internally laughing at him the whole time. Is there any way, and I'll never know unless someone translates it for me, but is there any way you'd be willing to just take a minute or two of this podcast and just have it go in a different language that I inherently will never understand unless I commit to learning a new language at the age of 36? And I'd have to imagine if I'm going to do that, even you would agree that your specific dialect of Vietnamese would probably not be the most wise choice.
I guess I could, and then like my mind is swimming for what I could talk about. And I feel like my Vietnamese is so rough since I moved away from home, but like I can totally give it a shot.
I would love that.
Oh man, this is like so hard.
No pressure.
This is like, there's totally pressure.
You could even be saying this is totally
No,
hard.
I feel like there's going to be a whole. This is like there's the entire Vietnamese community is going to go after me. They're somehow going to figure out like that it's me.
You may be overestimating the
very-
popularity of this podcast in the Vietnamese community, especially when we're already
I don't know.
53 minutes in.
I talk it up a lot to like everybody. I'm actually low-key afraid since I talk about it so much. People are going to know it's me. Okay. Ông này Chris Gethard là nói nhiều giỏi lắm. Nói với người vô tình luôn. Mà nói vui lắm. Vậy tôi là thích vậy nói ông này tại ông là người hiền. Okay, I think that's it.
Okay, I will never know. And you're saying that with the dialect, even a majority of Vietnamese speakers may not pick up on all of that.
Well, potentially not. Like sometimes when my Vietnamese friends talk to my mom, they tell me like afterwards, I just nodded along to that. Like I think I got like maybe some of it.
Okay.
But like what I was saying was pretty simple Vietnamese, so I think most people will get it.
All right. So if the Vietnamese community, if this episode catches fire in the Vietnamese community, know that it is genuine. I have no idea. There was just a roughly 45-second long chunk of this show where I am not certain. You could have said anything. You could have said, this podcast is garbage. Everybody should just download Hollywood Handbook instead. You could have said that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
You could have said, this is a poor man's Tom Sharpling. You could have just said that. I don't know. You could have just talked shit on me. I don't know. I'll never know. But if this catches fire in the Vietnamese community, welcome. And feel free to either tell me what was said or torment me for not knowing.
I will say I definitely talked about you.
Okay. Wow. I'm intrigued. Now
that's it.
All right. Now I really want to know.
Yeah.
And I hope another Vietnamese speaker can translate this for me. Fair. I mean, I did pick up on that, being that the first two words were very clear, Chris Gethard, and to my knowledge, my name does not directly translate into other Vietnamese words.
Into anything?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, you never know.
Yeah.
That's great.
Well, we got about 4 minutes left.
How much time do we have? 4 minutes?
4.5, something like that.
Hey,
did you say Bomb Digs?
what concerts are you going to? Yeah, I said Bomb Digs.
You just said Bomb Digs. Dude, I haven't been able to go. I really like going out to shows, and I'm into it, but I've been doing my off-Broadway show, and it's been kind of killing my schedule because the only days I have off are Monday and Tuesdays.
I wish I could go see that. Like, so badly.
Hey, maybe someday.
Like, every time I see a tweet about it.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Maybe you might be seeing some announcements. You might be. I'm not letting any cats out any bags. Maybe you'll see an announcement or two about how you might be able to see it someday. Who knows?
Oh, man.
Who knows?
I might drive like 9 hours to see you and like not die on the way because I was listening to your podcast.
Maybe someday. Who knows? But yeah, it's been killing my ability to go to shows. I'm trying to think if I got any shows coming up that I'm way out of the loop. But there's a bunch. I usually am known for I'll show up at different shows around Brooklyn and enjoy them. But I don't know. My wife's band might be playing. My wife's band might be playing the record. They might be playing a show with Laura Stevenson coming up, and she's an old pal, and I'd like to see her again. And I don't know who else is coming through. I don't get to go see shows anymore because I'm doing my own show, and I'm psyched on that. But I'll be happy when it's done so I can get back to having a social life.
Yeah. Not too many people come through our part of town. So I almost saw Kanye.
You almost saw Kanye?
Right. Yeah, because it was right before he had his, or right after he had his like psychotic break in Sacramento.
Yeah, that was a bummer.
He canceled the rest of his tour. And I was like, no, it was so hard. My old roommate and I are going to go buy like a white sheet cake later on to celebrate after like Christmas is over because the season has been so tough on us. Mm-hmm. We're going to go buy a white sheet cake that says 2016 even took Kanye from us, but not this cake. Wow. I just really want to like find really inane things to write on cakes.
Yeah, it sounds mostly like
people to write on cakes for me.
Sounds mostly just like you're pretty amused by the idea that you can get anything written on a cake.
Yeah. We also want one that just says "We have hair." I don't know why.
We have
hair. That sounds pretty fun to me too.
So
bless.
you just enjoy calling a cake store and keeping a straight face while making them write something weird on a cake.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is how I find my enjoyment here. Is I just ask people to write stuff on cakes.
Do you ever think about leaving the Midwest?
I should really just send them to people.
You've mentioned a few times.
I wish, dude.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few times I'm stuck in the Midwest. You want out. You want out. You want to go towards the coasts? Is that the plan?
No, I would love to live in like Seattle or San Francisco. My brother lives in San Francisco, but this nonprofit really, really has me. I don't think, unless like we expanded somewhere, I don't think I could leave. So I'll be here for a while.
Dedicated to
I
a
had
cause.
legit
That's
plans
cool.
that I was gonna to move out, like, and go to Denver where my best friend lives. But
yeah, you were gonna go to Denver. It all comes full circle. Of course, I bet you wanted to move to Denver around 18 months ago, 2 years ago, huh? That was when you wanted to move to Denver.
Wait, why 18 months ago?
Isn't that when they legalized the weed out there?
Oh my gosh, bro! Hey, I predicted that. Actually, hey, I have an ongoing bet with my friends that by 2020, will be like legalized, like nationwide.
Really, 2020?
And 2020. That's my prediction.
Yeah,
it's a very strong hope. But
you have 2020 vision with your bloodshot eyes.
Yeah, a girl can dream.
I got you all figured out, my friends. I got you all figured out.
All right. Thanks, man. Hey, thanks for listening to me. And like, this has been something I've been wanting to talk about for a while, so it's super cool.
Hey, thank you.
And I honestly just randomly called in.
You did. You called ahead of the prompt.
Yeah, I was like...
How often do you do it? How often are you just randomly dialing our phone number here?
Every so often. But I won't do it anymore. Now, like, the opportunity is open for other people.
Yeah, no, I'm psyched you called.
Stories.
It was really cool to hear your story and your family's story, and thanks for putting it out there, and thanks for all the food recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Like, this is literally a dream come true.
Thank you. I feel the same way.
Now, if 2020 happens, that'll be another dream come true. But we'll see.
Caller, thank you so much. I will wonder forever what was said about me, unless, of course, someone else out there can give it a shot. And I'm part of me that is an anxiety-riddled Irish Catholic will assume forever that you said that this was a bad experience and then I am responsible for it. So if anybody can translate, and at the very least, just let me know, hey, it's all good, man. I'd love that. Thank you, caller, for letting us know about your story. It was very cool to hear that in your own words in a real way when things are so hyperbolic surrounding this type of conversation lately. It really means a lot. I want to thank you. I want to thank everybody for listening, and so many people who helped make this show happen. The Reverend John Delore, Greta Cohn, Jared O'Connell, Shellshag, with our intro music. Want more about me? ChrisGethard.com, CareerSuicideShow.com if you want info on my off-Broadway show produced by Judd Apatow. And if you like this show, rate, review, subscribe on iTunes. It genuinely helps. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to all of you. I hope I get to talk to every single one of you in the future. Beautiful Anonymous. We'll be back next week. Therapy can and should be affordable, confidential, and convenient. Join over 300,000 users who already know that with Talkspace, you can text, audio message, or video message your therapist as many times as you want without having to wait a week for your next appointment, because with Talkspace, your therapist is always in your pocket or on your computer. Help show support for this show by visiting Talkspace.com/beautiful for a special $30 discount off your first month. Or download the Talkspace app on the Apple or Android App Store and use coupon code BEAUTIFUL. Talkspace is therapy for how we live today. Next time on Beautiful Anonymous, a lot of us have ideas about what it's like to fall into the world of drugs, but we're going to hear from someone who did, and it gets intense.
Great, I got